is inheritance. Already we have seen the overview of the concept of inheritance, right? In the our first unit. Now, what is inheritance? So, inheritance is the concept by which the properties of one entity are available to another one. Now, it allows the new classes to be built from the older and less specialized classes instead of being to rewrite from the beginning. Okay, so whatever the older classes are there, we can reuse that older classes for our some methods. We can use some methods from that older classes, and we can use that methods in our new classes. Okay, instead of rewriting from the beginning. So if we look at the example, real life part of example, a child inherits its looks, mannerisms, and qualities from his parents, like from his or her parents. Okay, in order to simulate this environment, C++ allows a class to inherit properties and functions from another one. So if you see this in figure, as I've already given that real life example, a child can have whatever the properties of his parents. Okay, so in look wise, in mannerisms, in qualities from his parent, he get the sum of the qualities. Okay, similarly, we can have the class that inherit properties and the functions or methods which are called the from the subclass, okay, or the derived class. What it is called as? It is called as subclass or the derived class. So as it is a child, it also called as a child class. It is getting the property from the its super class or the base class. So the class from which they are inherited the properties are called as super class or the base class. And the derived class inherits all the properties of the base class. Okay, so initially any derived class inherits all the properties of its base class and can add the properties of its own. Okay, if we write some class, it can have, if it is having the base class, then it will inherit the properties from the base class, plus it can add its own properties. So refinement of its own can be done. Okay, so the base class remains the unchanged. We are not changing our base class. We are just inheriting the properties of the base class. We are just inheriting the properties of the base class, right? So now next is the inheritance. For example, if we write a class person, for example, we write a class person that is suppose our base class, that is our base class having some methods like talk method, walk method, and eat method. This is comprises of our person base class, and then we will just write some few classes again which will inherit the properties of the person class. So suppose we will write the derived class, that is a math teacher, then again next derived class footballer, and one more class businessman. Okay, so all these three classes are the derived classes or the subclasses which are derived from the base class, and the base class name is person. So whatever the characteristics of the person class will be inherited towards its subclasses or the derived classes, namely math teacher, footballer, and businessman. So it has its own member as well. So what is the own member for math teacher? Teach math is a method. This is its own member function. Similarly, footballer is having its play football is its own method, and businessman is having its own method as run business. So all these three individual classes are having its own method plus which are inherited from the person class. All these are having the properties which it is accessing from the derived class whatever plus its properties from the its base class. Okay, this is the concept how we can frame out with the example person as a base class and these three derived classes, right? So this is the example which we can frame out. Now we will see how is the basic syntax for the inheritance. So when you are writing a base class, you have to just write it as it is, like class keyword and then followed with the name of the base class. Then whatever the member function and member variables you have to write inside that base class as it is. Then next is we have to write derived class. Now whenever you write a derived class, you have to give something like access specifier and the name of the base class, which will represent its inheritance. Now derived class colon, then the access specifier can be a private, protected or public. Out of those three, you can choose one of the access specifier and the name of the base class. Now whatever the things which is already written in base class, no need to write that again, because we are inheriting that properties from the base class. So only thing which you want to add on, only that method you have to include in the derived class. So we can have the definition of derived class member functions inside this or outside you can write. Okay, so out this we know the how to write inside or outside of that particular class. So access specifiers are nothing but how we can segregate this. Public, you know, as members are accessible from the outside the class. So that is a public thing. If you want to inherit the properties in the derived classes also, then you mention the access specifier as a public. Are you getting this? If you want to inherit again properties of the derived classes as well, then you make access specifier as a public. Then next is the private. So the members cannot be accessed from the outside the class. That means once you make it a private, only that becomes a derived class. Henceforth, you cannot again accessible to the another classes. Then next is very important, that is the protected one. So members cannot be accessed from outside class, but however, they can be accessed from the inherited class. So this is one of the main characteristic in the inheritance type concept, that whenever we write the protected as a scope, that means it will inherit it. Whatever the things of the class, it will be inherited in that particular class, derived class, as well as it has a concept which can be further given to the next derived classes as it is, because the members are given the protected scope, right? So these are the access specifier. That means how we can have the our derived class will be accessing the members of the our base class. So in the table format also it is given. In the table format I have written as the columns like access specifier name, then the concept like within same class, and the next is in derived class, and last is outside the class. So this can be a oral question again, right? So what is the inheritance? What are the different access specifiers? And how this access specifier works for the private scope, then protected, then the public. So if it is a private within the same class, yes. And if it is derived in derived class, no. But if it is outside the class, again no. But if it is protected access specifier, that means within the same class, yes. And in derived class, yes. But outside the world, no. Then if it is public, it is yes towards all the three things. Okay, so generally we focus for the protected access specifier for our inheritance. So this is the access specifier. Then how is the relationship in the object oriented programming? In this, one of the advantages of the object oriented programming language is to code reusability. Reusability in terms of the whole class, not only function, whole class. There are two ways we can do this code reuse, either by the implementation of inheritance or the object composition. Now, is a relationship based on the inheritance and has a relationship, that is the use of instance variable that are references to other objects. So we can have the composition relationship in terms of this example. There is a class bike. There is a class bike. Now in this example, which is our base class? Our base class is bike, right? And from that bike, we are going to derive one class, that is a class pulsar. Now this will have class pulsar will the properties gaining the class bike base class properties. So it is inherited as, we call it as a class bike is A, so it has is A properties. And next is from that middle portion, class pulsar is having the derived class from the class bike. Again we are having the properties, that is the class engine. So class engine is one again class which has the properties which are getting from the class bike. That means we are deriving to derived class. We are deriving the properties to the derived class and then again to derived class. Okay, so this a small example making the use of inheritance, that class A is given which having the variable A is equal to 5. No method is given here in class A. Then we can have the next, as we know the syntax, whenever we write the derived class, class colon public or private or protected, we can have the name of the base class. These are the access specifier. So access specifier, after that you are writing the base class. Now base class A is written here. Now next, you are not writing a variable of class B, you are just writing a method. Now method is void show method. In that void show method, you can access this variable because you have inherited the class A, while class B is becomes derived class. So we can write or access the class A functions as well as variable, member variables. So now cout statement is there, which is showing the value of A. Okay, so when it will work, now example, when it will work, a
Zero.
object, when you write object, when for the derived class you can call out the method show. Is it clear? Everything that has to be worked with the help of the object. As it is an object oriented programming, we have to write a class object. Now for this you have to write the derived class object. Okay, so in main method you have to write main method. In that you have to write class B. For class B object you can write down object and call the object dot show method. Now it will execute this portion and give the output A value is equal to 5.